Welcome, welcome, everyone. Great to see everybody there tonight. Weirdly enough, it was one of those things where I let it play a little bit longer this week because I had somebody last week that said, I didn't even get to hear the end of the music. And so I let it play the whole way tonight, even though there's a little darkness on the video there at the end. But so grateful to be back with you on this beautiful Thursday evening. I am currently in Columbus, Ohio. I know that many of you are from all over the place, so please let me know where you're tuning in from. Love to hear that in the chat. Love knowing where we have so many different individuals tuning in from all over the world. It's always great to have you all with us. If you're tuning in after the fact, please feel free. Let me know where you're tuning in from. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, wherever it is, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what your background is. Tell me a little bit about yourself. In fact, just today, we've had a lot of new group members that have joined us, and please feel free in the chat to let us know. We're also on the page itself on the Rabbit Hole Study group. Let us know who you are, where you're from, your background. I love knowing all those things. So I see people coming in from Dalton, Georgia, Calhoun, Georgia, from Monroe, Louisiana, from Henderson, Tennessee, lots of different individuals. I know some of you, and this is an odd thing, some of you are dealing with more snow than we are currently in Ohio, which is fascinating because that's usually the other way around. Although we are expecting snow later on tonight. In fact, probably about 9 o'clock my time, so about 2 hours from now, it's supposed to kick in even more, and we're supposed to have probably 1 or 2 inches of snow coming in. Which is fairly common for the Midwest. We know what to do with it when it comes to the roads. In fact, so it'll still be safe enough to get around. But I'm seeing so many that are snowed in. In fact, I had so many views this past week on some of the videos, including last year's videos on Mere Christianity and some of the other ones that are part of the group and part of our group on YouTube, because I think a lot of you were just snowed in, iced in, needing something to do. So grateful those videos came back to be of a blessing to you all in some way or another. I hope you've got your books with you. We've got a lot to cover tonight, a lot to dive into. Excited about this. At any point in time along the way, feel free, add some comments, add some thoughts, whatever you would like. I do my best to try to keep up with them right here as they're streaming by me. And so I'd love to know that. I see Joshua McCloy coming in from Wyoming. Yes. Part-time evangelist up there. Fantastic. Hunter Schmidt, from Finger, Tennessee. Absolutely. So great to have you guys all with us. I will tell you, it's always shocking to me. We have probably sometimes 13 to 40 that come in live during the actual live classes, I call it here. And then we have others that tune in after the fact. And so you guys are about a part of a group of about 1,000 to 2,000. And that's a fairly large group of individuals. Always shocks me from, I've counted up now about 25 to 30 different countries too. And about 35 states or so. And yes, John Dobbs, I should have said Fanger, not Finger, Tennessee. It's Fanger, Tennessee. That is very true. My grandfather would absolutely know that one, as he is one of the elders and ministers at the Fanger Church of Christ out there. So great call on that one. My accent is giving me away. I've become too Midwestern, I guess, in some form or fashion. So, well, I hope you're ready. Here we go. We're going to dive into our basically the preface and then into letters 1 and 2. And we'll do just a little quick recap just to get us where we need to be. We'll go from there. So, starting off this fantastic study of Screwtape. And the Screwtape letters by C.S. Lewis. And I found two fantastic quotes that I loved. And one of the favorite ones was this one: the best way to drive out the devil, if he will not yield to text of Scripture, is to jeer and flout him, for he cannot bear scorn. And I always love that. And that's very much in the same light of what Lewis is actually doing throughout this whole entire thing. And I would be remiss if I didn't try doing an accent here, because if you know it, that's the way it's written. It's the devil, the proud spirit, cannot endure to be mocked. But I am not going to do the actual accent there of Thomas More and the rest. And I do think there's an aspect, as I talked last week, where I believe the devil is real and Satan is real and demons are real. And even though Screwtape and Wormwood are fictional characters of a beautiful mind that created them, that devils and Satan are real. And this book, in some ways, does a very good job of mocking of that. And I think there's an aspect where our understanding of that is helpful as we walk through this study. So, as I noted last week, the Screwtape letters are what we would consider an epistolary novel. And it was first published in 1941, and then published in the USA in 1943, and then translated globally in the 1950s. And if you want to remember, an epistolary novel is a work of fiction that is written in the form of letters or documents. And so, much like we have the scriptural epistles, which were letters to individuals, it is written in that same style, but we have a one-sided conversation that is these letters. And found some fantastic kind of quick overviews from Britannica specifically, that it says, written in defense of the Christian faith, this popular satire consists of a series of 31 letters in which Screwtape, an experienced devil, instructs his young charge, Wormwood, on effective strategies for tempting the human being assigned to him, and makes sure he continues on a steady path towards damnation. And then he also say, though this satiric use of the demonic narrative persona, or through this satiric use of the demonic narrative persona, Lewis examines the opposing sides in the battle between good and evil. This book's success begins with its witty use of ironic inversion. And this is something that we don't see a lot of, but it's something that's fascinating from a literary perspective. And he notes, for example, God is the enemy, Satan is our father below, hierarchy becomes lowerarchy, and more important are its depth of spiritual understanding and keen psychological insights into human hypocrisies, lack of self-awareness, and actual motivations. And I really do love the concept of ironic inversions. And so keep that in mind as we go. As you read this, when you hear the enemy, your mind may instantly go, well, that must be referencing Satan, when in reality, it's actually referencing God. And so it's the opposite premise of itself. So what does the preface looks like? We're going to dive into it. Starts off by saying this: I have no intention of explaining how the correspondence which I now offer to the public fell into my hands. There are two equal and opposite arrows into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence, the other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with the same delight. The sort of script which is used in this book can be very easily obtained by anyone who has once learned the knack, but disposed or excitable people who might make a bad use of it shall not learn it from me. Now, I do love this because he creates a sense of intrigue instantly. I have no intention of explaining how this correspondence fell into my hands. And instantly, even though you know it's not, real, and he knows it's not real, you go, oh, okay, but we're taking this seriously because it feels like we've captured something we're not supposed to have. And any great author being able to instantly grab you with the opening line, even of a preface, opening line goes, ooh, there's something here I need to be reading. There's something more I want to know about this. It's a fascinating way to introduce the book that people knew was fiction, but at the same time feels like it's not fiction. And I love the way that he did that. And there is this danger of fascination that he notes, fascination with the occult, with devils and demons. And there is a danger in both denying their very existence and also a fascination with the occult and devil and demons. And this is something he notes. And I do love, he says, you're not going to learn it from me, but I do want us to know that the devil is proud of both sides of this, whether you become fascinated completely with it or if you deny the existence altogether. And so there has to be a balance here. And I think this book gives us a good insight into how we can balance our understanding of the spiritual realm, both of demons and of angels and the rest. And in essence, it is two sides to a coin. There are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall into about the devils. One is to disbelieve their existence, the other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. And if we can be honest, there are people you may have met who fall into this category, either one or the other. One, in fact, and we see this quite a bit in our culture now, who disbelieve in hell. That, in fact, I think the book just came out probably about 15 years ago called Love Wins, which was basically a complete denial that ultimately hell and the whole premise will go away, that there will be no such thing. And I think that's a very dangerous theology in and of itself that, for one, it's not biblical. And number two, that it gives into this very idea that all of the spiritual concepts of the realms of the devil and the rest are not something that we actually need to be worried about in any way, shape, or form. And I definitely wanted to notice this on the other side of this. This verse always popped up to me as I was reading through this. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. That the things that we put into our mind, the things that we put into our hearts consistently, does affect how we view things. Now, if you read scripture, and this is all the things that are true and honorable and good and pure and lovely, you will read and deal with demons and all the rest. That will happen. But don't miss the connection to also thinking upon good things, about healthy things, about right things. And so be careful about falling into the fascination of one or the other. Mainly because of this. While you still also have that scripture, you have be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. So you have to balance both the acknowledgement of Satan and demon, but you also need to acknowledge that this is not what we ultimately want to spend all of our time thinking about. So he continues on by saying, readers are advised to remember that the devil is a liar. Not everything that Screwtape says should be assumed to be true, even from his own angle. I have made no attempt to identify any of the human beings mentioned in the letters, but I think it very unlikely that the portraits, say, of Friar Spike or the patient's mothers, are wholly just. There is wishful thinking in hell as well as on earth. And there's two specific parts that I love. The first one is this: the devil is a liar. And also the second one is there's wishful thinking in hell as well as on earth. Both of those I believe to be absolutely true statements. One, because we know that to be true from verses itself. John 8:44, you are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. And one of the quotes that always comes up to me more often than others, how often people who are deceiving themselves they bought into Satan's lies, they themselves are the most enslaved. In fact, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe actually says, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. And there are many out there who have bought into lies, thinking that would make them free, when in reality it has enslaved them because they bought into the lies themselves. He concludes this preface by saying, in conclusion, I ought to add that no effort has been made to clear up the chronology of the letters. Number 17 appears to have been composed before rationing became serious, but in general, the diabolical method of dating seems to bear no relation to terrestrial time, and I have not attempted to reproduce it. The history of the European war, except insofar as it happens now and then to impinge upon the spiritual condition of one human being, was obviously of no interest to Screwtape. Now, he writes this from Magdalen College, July 5th, 1941, and if you know anything about history and the rest, right at the beginning of all of this, and when this was first published, first written, and when he started off, this was at the height of World War II. We're talking about some of the worst times across Europe when it came about. But he doesn't seem to be wanting to focus in very much on the very premise of the war itself. The war apparently is not the point. And that's one of the things he's going to get at. It's not the point in and of itself. He wants to focus in on that which ultimately really matters, which is the content. So he's going to use as a backdrop that which is happening around him, especially for the patient and the demons, but it's ultimately not the point. It's not really about the war. So, letter 1. What does letter 1 look like? Let us dive in. I know what you say. And he starts off by, I should start off by saying, he always entitles, my dear Wormwood, I know what you say about guiding our patient's reading and taking care that he sees a good deal of our materialist friend. But are you not being a trifle naive? It sounds as if you suppose that argument was the way to keep him out of the enemy's clutches. That might have been so if he had lived a few centuries earlier. At that time, the humans still knew pretty well when a thing was proved and when it was not. And if it was proved, they really believed it. They still connected thinking with doing and were prepared to alter their way of life as a result of a chain of reasoning. But what with the weekly press and other such weapons, we have largely altered that. Now, I do need to note, weekly press and the rest of that time, it's very true. That had altered, and he's noting this in 1941, 1942. Think about where we are today. 24-hour cable news, social media, all sorts of different things coming about. Oh, we're talking about a whole other realm of alteration as to what is rational thought and what is believed and what is not believed. Your man has been accustomed, ever since he was a boy, to have a dozen incompatible philosophies dancing about together inside his head. He doesn't think of doctrines as primarily true or false, but as academic or practical, outworn or contemporary, conventional or ruthless. Jargon, not argument, is your best ally in keeping him from the church. Don't waste time trying to make him think that materialism is true. Make him think that it is strong or stark or courageous. that it is the philosophy of the future. That's the sort of thing he cares about. And this is where I just want to note this concept, what I've often referred to through the years as bumper sticker theology. Jargon, not argument, is your best ally in keeping him from the church. And boy, do we not see this in our culture every day. Let me give you some examples. I've experienced so much church trauma. I'm spiritual, but not religious. Truth is relative. All churches are the same. Is it true? Can it be true? What does this mean? Is it real or perceived? Are these real? In fact, this church concepts that we start talking about and we start hearing this church terminology. In fact, I've jokingly started referring it to as it's basically Christianese or churchanese. It's a whole way of discussing and talking about things. Now, I do want to be very careful here because I also want to note, I do believe that there are real moments, real things, real situation where there has been actual trauma, where there has been actual things that have happened. But surely many of us can realize that now we've learned to speak a language at times where when people simply don't get their way on something, there is an expression of jargon that comes in that is meant to deceive, distort. It's meant to destroy us. It's meant to cause division and harm, where we jump to conclusions about people's perceptions or something they wrote or something that they did, and we assume motives or assume intent in a way that is not only not helpful, it's not Christian, it's not biblical, but everything becomes about specific terminologies and specific things, and this has become so dangerous. In fact, this is one of the things that Screwtape here specifically writes about is make sure that he's constantly hearing basically different things, different terminology, different ways. And jargon becomes the way we talk, the way we speak. And the book of James speaks of this often when it talks about the tongue being deceptive above all things and the tongue being the hardest thing to control, and he who is able to bridle his tongue. This is tough. This is hard. So I don't want you to miss that I don't want you to think I'm just dismissing the reality of how hard it is at times to not fall into this trap. But there is a trap. And when we acknowledge that there's a trap, that we can find ourselves saying and doing things where we go, is it really true? Is what I'm saying really true? Is what I felt real, or is it just a feeling? Or is it just a moment? Am I actually saying what I think I'm saying when I use these words, when I use this terminology? And this is where I want us to get into in 1 Corinthians. It directly notes this. And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and much trembling. And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstrations of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Now, I want to note to you just in general, I shared this last week, that I am an academic in my own right, and just from a standpoint of the world that I often live in. I work as a campus minister. I'm working towards advanced degrees. I know that, and so I know how to speak at times in ways that are not helpful, that in fact can always cause division and confusion, can cause more problems, because oftentimes it sounds nice to sound big, to sound smart, to sound good, to use terminologies and words that others might not use. But the reality is even what Paul is kind of hinting at, I wanted to use the words that people could understand. And I want actions that people could understand, instead of the confusion that so often Satan wants to throw at us, that the devil wants to throw at us, that we might be confused and not see what he's really trying to get at, what he really wants us to understand. And believe it or not, words are how that's often done. It's how we communicate, or when we don't say what we actually believe. Getting a yes or no answer, just think from our political world right now, just getting a yes or no answer from people at times can feel like pulling teeth. I look back to just a couple of weeks ago and what felt like fairly direct questions that a person could answer, especially in front of the committee there, was, is this a breach of the Harvard student conduct to call for the genocide of Jews? And the answer should have been very simple. And I'm saying this as a Harvard grad, and it was hard to watch somebody go, well, it's contextual. And part of me wanted to go, look, I get what lawyers have said and what others, but the reality is that when you know something to be right and true, then you say what is right and true. When you are trying to find a way around an answer because you're trying to hedge a bet or hedge off a lawsuit or whatever it may be, that we no longer speak the way we're meant to speak. And this is why Paul, I think, encourages us to proclaim the testimony of God without lofty speech or wisdom in and of itself. There are times when speaking on really deep and intrinsic things of scriptures and doctrines that you do speak in a language that is biblical in nature, but don't get lost in it. Don't let it become the very essence of how you speak, especially if it becomes part of your own persona. He continues on by saying the trouble about argument is that it moves the whole struggle onto the enemy's own ground. And I love that. He can argue too. Whereas in really practical propaganda of the kind I am suggesting, he has been shown for centuries to be greatly the inferior to our Father below. By the very act of arguing, you awake the patient's reason. And once it is awake, who can foresee the result? Even if a particular train of thought can be twisted so as to end in our favor, you will find that you have been strengthening in your patient the fatal habit of attending to universal issues and withdrawing his attention from the stream of immediate sense experiences. Your business is to fix his attention on the stream. Teach him to call it real life, and don't let him ask what he means by real. Now, this is fascinating. Feelings. It's always about feelings. By the very act of arguing, you awake the patient's reason. And once it is awake, who can foresee the result? Even if a particular train of thought can be twisted so as to be used in the end of our favor, you will find that you've been strengthening in your patient the fatal habit of attending the universal issues and withdrawing his attention from the stream of immediate sense experiences. The right here, the right now, these moments, what I can touch, what I can feel, how I feel about something, and I'll just throw this out there because it may be something's happening to you right now. For example, I am well aware that Satan does not want, because I believe Satan to be real and I believe demons to be real, Satan does not want your attention on the Word of God, does not want your attention possibly even on what you're doing right now. Sitting here on this class, watching on YouTube, watching on Facebook, sitting here and participating in this, reading through a book that acknowledges its existence. Don't miss the fact. And so there may be even little distractions, little things, pop-ups, notifications on your phone, things like that could come up on your computer screen, distractions that may try to draw you away and say, oh, I'll get back to that at another time. Yes, you're having that thought right now. Maybe it is actually spurring some thoughts in you, but don't get too bogged down in that. That's not really important. Real life is calling you over here. Maybe it's dinner. Maybe it's a child. And by the way, it's not necessarily bad things that are calling you away. They may be good things, healthy things, and the rest. But this is how, especially in this letter, this demon is specifically trying to pull attention and saying, this is how. Get the immediate sense experiences at the forefront of what they see as most important in their life. Make sure that's at the paramount point of their experiences. And notice also because of this, notice Jeremiah 17, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? So I've said this 1,000 times and I'll say it again. You may be the first time you've heard me say it, but as no one has lied to you like you lied to you. No one has deceived you like you have deceived yourself. No one has hurt you the way that you have hurt you through your own actions, your own decisions, your own things. And most often that comes from what we would see as the heart. It comes from our feelings in the moments, what we're experiencing, what we want, what we desire. Don't miss that. The heart is deceitful above all things and is desperately sick. Who can understand it? From there, he goes on to say this. Remember, he is not like you, a pure spirit. Never having been a human, oh, that abominable advantage of the enemies. You don't realize how enslaved they are to the pressure of the ordinary. I once had a patient, a sound atheist, who used to read in the British Museum. One day, as he sat reading, I saw a train of thought in his mind beginning to go the wrong way. The enemy, of course, was at his elbow in a moment. Before I knew where I was, I saw my 20 years' work beginning to totter. If I had lost my head and begun to attempt to defense by argument, I should have been undone. But I was not such a fool. Now notice just what I shared with you just a second ago. Here's a real-life example that he's given in this letter. I struck instantly at the part of the man which I had best under my control and suggested that it was just about time he had some lunch. The enemy presumably made the counter-suggestion. You know how one can never quite overhear what he says to them? That this was more important than lunch. At least I think that must have been his line, for when I said, quite, in fact, much too important to tackle it to the end of the morning. The patient brightened up considerably, and by the time I had added, much better come back after lunch and go into it with a fresh mind, he was already halfway to the door. Once he was in the street, the battle was won. These real life things that we often don't think can be distractions because they're not inherently bad. But maybe they are moments where Satan and demons are trying to distract us away from what it is that we're doing in the moment. A moment where God is trying to instigate us, trying to encourage us beyond just where we are. Maybe, just maybe, that's where we are. Ordinary distractions. One day, as he sat reading, I love that, and once he was in the street, the battle was won. Ordinary distractions. So here's a question for you to think upon. What are some of the ordinary distractions? Now, can I just throw out one that sounds ordinary that I actually don't think is automatically always good? Maybe it's your phone. Maybe it's your everyday life. Maybe it's those things. Maybe it's family, and I don't mean that as a negative, but family can also be a distraction from that which God has set before you in the ways that you lead your family. By being in the Word, by studying God's Word, by spending time doing the things that you are called to do as a leader for your family. As a mom, as a dad, ordinary things can be distractions that lead us away from the will that God actually has for us. Ecclesiastes 2 says this, "And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun." I'll say it 1,000 times over, as I've said it before. You will never out-sin Solomon in the ways in which you will never out have things, out money, out enjoy pleasure, out drink, out anything Solomon from what we see from Scripture and the way that he lived his life in those days. And he comes around to all of it, says all of it, all those things that even God created for good that can in excess become evils and terrible things. He did all of those things and came back to the end and said there was nothing to be gained, nothing in the end. Ordinary distractions, small things can often hit us. I showed him a newsboy shouting the midday paper and a number 73 bus going past, and before he reached the bottom of the steps, I had got him an unalterable conviction that, whatever odd ideas might come into a man's head when he was shut up alone with his books, a healthy dose of real life, by which he meant the bus and the newsboy, was enough to show him that all that sort of thing just couldn't be true. He knew he'd had a narrow escape, and in latter years was fond of talking about that inarticulate sense of actuality, which is our ultimate safeguard against the aberrations of mere logic. And notice this last statement. He is now safe in our Father's house. So what is he getting at? He is safely in the arms of Satan. He is in hell. Reason denied is an eternal choice. When you stop yourself from thinking about the things because you lie to yourself and say, well, it's too hard, I will never understand it, I don't get this, or I just don't understand what I should be doing right now, or maybe I could do something else, or, this is, I don't have anybody here to explain it to me. No, I shouldn't research, I shouldn't look this up, I shouldn't ask someone, I shouldn't go and check in and see how people are doing, I shouldn't do any of those things. I should just let it go. I've got too many real life things to focus on, too many things just to do. I just need to focus on those things. Reason denied is an eternal choice. That's really what this gets at. And he is now safe in our Father's house. Matthew 10:28 says, "And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell." And this is just a sobering awakening when it comes down to it. You begin to see the point. Thanks to processes which we set at work in them centuries ago, they find it all but impossible to believe in the unfamiliar while the familiar is before their eyes. Keep pressing on him the ordinariness of things. Above all, do not attempt to use science, I mean the real sciences, as a defense against Christianity. They will positively encourage him to think about realities he can't touch and see. There have been sad cases among the modern physicists. Realities one can't touch or see. Above all, do not attempt to use real science. I have some great friends that work and do some fantastic work with Apologetics Press and the rest that spend a lot of time in the sciences. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. God is not afraid of your discoveries in the sciences. God is not going to be disproven through the sciences. And I mean, even the hard sciences and the real sciences. In fact, the more we have studied and found in the sciences, the more God has been proven to be true. Now, I'm well aware that some will say, well, that's not provable from a scientific perspective. And I don't think that's the point. Nothing can truly be proven historically by the scientific method because it has to be reproduced over and over again. That is the scientific method. But what can be shown is how often God, in the smallest ways, can be seen navigating through creation, through time, through space, through history. We see it over and over again where the only answer is the Creator God. But notice what he's going to say here, and I want to catch into this. The social sciences are often items of the heart. In fact, he will get into this moment here in a second where he'll actually speak of the social sciences. And this is a huge premise within our current culture. Current culture is dominated by social sciences that oftentimes we think that what they're saying or teaching is inherently true. Most of my studies that I've done in the academic world have been in theology and religion, but under the guise and under the viewpoint of social sciences, specifically sociology, of anthropology, of philosophy, in those realms. And this has led to some fairly fascinating things that are happening in our culture that most of us may not be aware of, but we just kind of accept them because things like, well, the experts say this, or there's a study being done that shows this. And historically, when we hear experts and so forth, we tend to just accept these things for face value. Now, over the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years, that has kind of gone out the window. And there are a lot of people who are, mourning the very premise that people are no longer just accepting, good scholarship and so forth. I would argue that what they're not accepting is not because it's not good scholarship, is that when they actually read into it or see it, they see that it may not be one scholarship. It may be opinion, it may be thought, it may be a lot of different things. But it's not even oftentimes science. It's not even the very things. It may have become political in some form or fashion. Now, we should be careful because I do want to say that there are a lot of fantastic academics, scientists, and the rest out there who are publishing fantastic articles, fantastic things that I encourage people to read, to do your research, to look into what they're saying. But don't miss that we have a current culture where social sciences has become king. Interpretation of human behaviors has become king, and none of them are without their own viewpoint or bias or lens. All of them are very, very much in that. As an example, the SoCal experiment. Some of you may have heard of this or seen this before, but in 1996, there was an article written called Transgressing the Boundaries Towards a Transformative Hermeneutics of Quantum Gravity. And this was submitted by Dr. Alan Sokal to Social Text, which is a publication, and it was accepted and admitted and so forth. The problem is that he specifically wrote it thinking that this is how I would get it goes, I'm going to create complete nonsense, but I'm going to make it sound really good, and I'm going to make it sound like something I think this specific article and people would want to push forward as their agenda. And it was accepted and it was published, even though they did not review his sources. They did not look up what he was saying. There was the scientific method of publication and looking at all the stuff was not held to. Their publication metrics were not actually up to any type of par. And it was a big kind of black eye for these so-called experts who were now publishing things simply because they liked what it said or agreed with it, but they weren't necessarily talking about whether or not it was true or not. They were just publishing it. This was followed just more recently by what has now been called the Grievance Studies Affair. In 2017, 2018, Dr. Peter Boghossian, Dr. James Lindsay, and Dr. Helen Pluckrose wrote 20 articles for leading social science publications and journals that were all of them complete and utter nonsense. They were all written under the guise of what's called grievance studies affairs. So fat phobia, transphobia, gender studies, and the rest. And they were written specifically with utilizing the language of social sciences, of critical theory, critical race theory, and critical gender studies to publish complete nonsense out there and to see if they could get it published in these leading journals at the time, articles that were not true at all, that were completely fabricated. And 4 were published, 3 were accepted, but were not published because the hoax was revealed prior to publication. 6 were rejected, and 7 were under review when the hoax was revealed. Now, I can't even publish or can't even have live to you what actually happened, some of the titles of these actual things. But I will just give you some. These were some of the accepted papers. Human Reactions to Rape Culture and Queer Performativity at Urban Dog Parks in Portland, Oregon. Another one was Who Are They to Judge? Overcoming Anthropometry and a Framework for Fat Bodybuilding. And the third one is probably the most fascinating one. It was accepted but not published because it was found out to be that like a news article broke about them having done this prior to it actually being published, even though it had been accepted for publication, called Our Struggle is My Struggle, Solidarity as an Intersectional Reply to Neoliberal and Choice Feminism. Now, what you need to know about this one is it was a rewording through modern social lens of this book, Mein Kampf. It was a rewording of Mein Kampf in modern social constructs, and it was accepted for publication in the social sciences. And I don't want you to come away with thinking that all social science is junk, and it's not. It's not. It's my field of study in a lot of ways. But I do want you to note that there is a lot of inherent bias and a lot of inherent individuals who write, and to be published does not automatically mean that what is being published is inherently real or true. In fact, when you go and read these articles, read these things, you will look at some of them and go, how is this that? And maybe you've seen that and felt that. And this is where we've lived in a world right now where this idea of listening to voices who are people who have more knowledge than us and more understanding and more PhDs and more degrees than the rest, maybe we should actually listen to what they're writing, what they're actually saying, what they're actually doing. And that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. It really is, because it fascinates to me that they just reworded Mein Kampf and that got through as a publication, as a paper. So he continues on by saying, if he must dabble in science, keep him on economics and sociology. Notice that, right? Don't let him get away from the invaluable real life. In fact, that is so much of what sociology is all about in the social sciences. This is real life. This is about real things that are happening, whether it's gender or race or social. All of that is this real. Make that the focus of everything you focus on, all the things of this life instead of that which actually matters in eternity. But the best of all is to let him read no science, but to give him a great general idea that he knows it all, and that everything he happens to have picked up is casual talk, and reading is the result of modern investigation. So everything he's already accepted is good, and all the things that he reads is because people have already done the research for him. Do remember you are there to fuddle him, to confuse him. From the way some of you young fiends talk, anyone would suppose it was your job to teach. And he said, it's not your job to teach, it's your job to confuse. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape. Casual talk is real talk. But the best of all is to let him read no science, but to give him a grand general idea that he knows it all, and that everything he happens to have picked up in casual talk and reading is the result of modern or modem investigation. Don't miss that. So, question for you, where do you get your truth from? Who do you trust? Media? Social media? Twitter? X? Persons? Conversations? Where do you get your information from? And this may sound like I'm just kind of a natural skeptic, and in some ways I am. But I got to a point where I used to say all the time, I don't like the term conspiracy theories, mainly because it's been so overused now, and it's just kind of label people, put on people and others. But I do want to note, as I always tell people all the time, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just have questions. And I don't think it's a bad thing for me to spend time thinking through what I claim to then believe, what I claim to then say is true or not. And so just because somebody says something does not mean I should accept it, but it doesn't also mean that I shouldn't research it. I shouldn't figure out if this is true or not. I have a responsibilities for the things that I think and say and believe. I have a responsibility for the things that I teach. I should be held accountable for that. And in Acts 16 and 17, you see this beautiful moment where they're referenced as the Bereans were known as people who were of more noble character because they searched the scriptures daily to see if what was being said was true. And the man speaking was Paul. We might go, well, it's Paul. Good grief. How do you not trust him? Well, let me turn that around and say, no, the more noble character are those who search the scriptures daily to see if it's true. Are you a person who has a lot of knowledge but no wisdom? Because you might know a lot of things, but you don't know how to utilize it. how to actually put it into practice. So where do you get your truth from? Is it from God, or is it from the things that you've read and you picked up? Have you just accepted them as true because they sound true, or you want to accept them inherently? And candidly, this is really tough because there's a lot of things out there where I will read it and I will go, wow, man, that sounds great. I like that. And then I might have to stop myself and go, okay, but is that just me thinking that I like that, or is that because it's true? Because there are a lot of moments where I want things to be true, but then I turn around after and I look through the lens of Scripture and look through the eyes of how Jesus wants me to see people and to see others and go, it would be nice and easy to think that, but it's not inherently true. It's just something that would be nice to believe in this moment. And if I can really encourage all of us is this, there are some of us who have bought into the modern lens of accepting basically anything anybody says to be true simply because they said it. There are a lot of us in the social sciences and the rest, especially in the last few years, who have bought into a lot of what I would even note is, I call it the Jesus plus gospel. It's where you have to have Jesus plus something else. So not only do you have to read the Scripture, but you also need to make sure that you spend a lot of time on Ibram Kendi or on Robin DiAngelo, but also on the other side, where you also have to have a deep understanding of Donald Trump, or you also have to have a deep understanding of, white evangelicalism. You also have to have a deep understanding of Jordan Peterson or the rest. Like, there's this Jesus plus mentality that so many of us have fallen into, where we don't realize the lenses that we put on, the philosophies that we've adopted in our lives, instead of going, what does Jesus want from me? What does his word say when it comes to how I'm supposed to view truth? What is real truth? And it is to seek God's will, not my own and the rest. And so it's just my encouragement that maybe you've fallen into that. Maybe you spend just a lot of time talking about those things. And that's just a struggle. It's hard. So don't miss that. I just wanted to lay that before you as we dive into this. This is where I note a lot of times, you guys know these people, right? Google scholars, keyboard warriors, experts say they're always on social media, ready to go, ready to have something. They can pop out an article in 10 minutes based off of somebody wrote along the way, completely misrepresenting what they wrote and the rest, but they're good to go because they've got their arguments, they've got their stuff ready to go. I'm just, part of me understands it. Part of me I feel that too, but the other side of me also wants to go, or maybe we should look for the best in people and find ways to find the best way to interpret what they said and be ready to think about wisdom and not just knowledge. And there's a difference between that. So letter 2, last part here. Let's dive in. I love the second letter. It's a fantastic one. I note with great displeasure that your patient has become a Christian. Do not indulge the hope that you will escape the usual penalties. Indeed, in your better moments, I trust you would hardly even wish to do so. In the meantime, we must make the best of the situation. There is no need to despair. Hundreds of these adult converts have been reclaimed after a brief sojourn in the enemy's camp and are now with us. All the habits of the patient, both mental and bodily, are still in our favor. So if you've noticed, what's happened here is the patient has been converted. They've become a believer, have become a Christian. And so from letter 1 to letter 2, something has happened, and all of a sudden he goes, he's become a Christian. Now there's going to be punishment for that, but let me tell you, this is not always a bad thing, because we can use this in a lot of ways. Faith is not the end, it is the beginning. And this is something I say all the time. When you're baptized and die to yourself in the waters of baptism and rise a new creation, that is not the end. That is not the goal. The goal is for you to be in eternity with God in heaven. I note with grave displeasure that your patient has become a Christian. But just because he's become a Christian does not mean that he will live out the life of a Christian. Just because he has obeyed in the moment does not mean inherent all the time. What it does mean is that, and this is where I think we've been faulty at times in Christianity, where we think baptism is the end, when it is the very beginning. It is the beginning of the walk with God, and we must acknowledge that. Then there needs to be discipleship and a continuation of growth, progress, not perfection, but progress on a day-to-day basis in our faith, walking with God. Now, you will never earn your salvation. That's not what I'm saying. You will never arrive at a point where you'll say, well, I've earned my way in. It is always the grace and mercy of God. But God does expect us to do his will, to be about our Father's business, to do the things that he has called us to do. In fact, he says Um, you will know that you are my disciples by your love for one another. He also says, if you love me, you will obey my commands. And his commands were for us to walk in the light as he is in the light. And that is how we show our love. We are not saved by works. We work because we are saved. That is the difference. We do those things out of the abundance of God's grace and mercy. We set forth into the world to show that light into the world. That's what we are called to do. Our habits, all the habits of the patient, both mental and bodily, are still in our favor. And boy, we don't think about our habits very often, right? But we'll get into this. One of our great allies at present is the church itself. Now, this candidly always kind of steps on my toes a little bit, but I totally get it. Do not misunderstand me. I do not mean the church as we see her spread, but through all time and space and rooted in eternity, terrible as an army with banners. That, I confess, is a spectacle which makes our boldest tempters uneasy. But fortunately, is quite invisible to these humans. All your patient sees is the half-finished sham Gothic erection on the new building estate. When he goes inside, he sees the local grocer with rather an oily expression on his face, bustling up to offer one shiny little book containing a liturgy which neither of them understands, and one shabby little book containing corrupt text of a number of religious lyrics, mostly bad and in very small print. Now, can we be honest with this? This hits home a little bit because I love the way he describes the church at the beginning there, especially the way that I know God sees the church and sees us. But then the next part is candidly one of the key components I hear from people all the time. And this is kind of the modern stigma. One of our greatest allies at present is the church itself. Okay? What the church really is not what we see. And so when he says, I do not mean the church as we see her spread out throughout all time and space and rooted in eternity, terrible as an army with banners, that, I confess, is a spectacle which makes our boldest tempers uneasy. That we don't think about, the army that is the church globally. And one of the best ways I know I have to think about this for myself is, my father said this years ago, was the very premise of the church never sets, the sun never sets on the church worshiping God. Like just the sun around the world, no matter where there are people worshiping God all across the globe. And when I suddenly hit that, I was like, okay, so it's not just me in my local context. It's people all over the world worshiping God to the best of their abilities. There's something beautiful. And then the eternal nature of the church, the angelic armies and the ready, standing at the right hand of God, ready for the second coming, all of these different things that we just don't think about. But see, when we hear church, we think something different. We see a building. We see people that we know that sometimes we're frustrated with or angry with or whatever it may be, and we miss out. What we see is the local grocer with a rather oily expression, or the greeter we don't really like, or that lady that always gives us that weird look, or the person that smells a little odd, or the guy with the squeaky shoes. Good grief, just do something about that. Or the kid who sings out of tune at the top of their lungs, or the individual who always seems to be so angry, and we notice all of these tiny little things. Or I don't like the music there, or I'm not a big fan of, they sing old hymns instead of the modern ones. And I really like it better when they pass the tray. I don't like the little cups and stuff. And, I'm a much bigger fan of them actually. I don't like the PowerPoints. We got to sing by songbook. Like all of those different things can become very small things that we constantly acknowledge without realizing it doesn't matter. But that's the distraction that he will get to. When he gets to his pew and looks around him, he sees just the selection of his neighbors whom he has hitherto avoided. You want to lean pretty heavily on those neighbors, make his mind flit to and fro between an expression like the body of Christ and the actual faces in the next pew. It matters very little, of course, what kind of people that next pew really contains. You may know one of them to be a great warrior on the enemy's side. No matter, your patient, thanks to our Father below, is a fool. Provided that any of those neighbors sing out of tune or have books that squeak or double chins or odd clothes, the patient will quite easily believe that their religion must therefore be somehow ridiculous. Now, I love that because that is oftentimes the perception we give and that we think this is acceptable. So what's the point? Distract, distort, destroy. Your patient, thanks to our Father below, is a fool. So what do? Distract him. Make him think that this is ridiculous. Make him think that this is not important. Make sure he notices all the things that ultimately don't matter. At the present stage, you see, he has an idea of Christians in his mind which he supposes to be spiritual, but which in fact is largely pictorial. His mind is full of togas and sandals and armor and bare legs, and the mere fact that the other people in church wear modern clothes is a real, though of course an unconscious, difficulty to him. Never let it come to the surface. Never let him ask what he expected them to look like. Keep everything hazy in his mind now, and you will have all eternity wherein to amuse yourself by producing in him the peculiar kind of clarity which hell affords. Fascinating insight there. Spiritual versus pictorial. At this present stage, you see he has an idea of Christians in his mind which he supposes to be spiritual, but which in fact is largely pictorial. So question for you, and you could put this in the chat, or maybe you can send me a message later. Even now, maybe some of you have been in the church or been Christians your entire life. Is this still a struggle for you? What you think Christians should look like, what you think Christians should speak like, be like, do. Maybe even you have a pretty deep understanding of it, but maybe you haven't quite grasped or realized that maybe not everybody's at the same point in their spiritual journey. Maybe some are very new in their faith. And in fact, I'll just be honest with you, there are sometimes I've met Christians who've been believers their entire life, but only in the last year or two have truly become Christians. They spent most of their life childish, not childlike in their faith. Instead of learning, they just went through the motions. So age is not necessarily a sign of what a Christian looks like. Dress is not always a sign of what a Christian looks like. What is your perception of what a Christian is? Is it purely pictorial? Or is it spiritual? Is it based off of the actions? Is it based off of who they are in their actual lives? And it may not even be things that you see per se. It may just be their reputations. It may be what they're known for. Are they known for good? Are they known for joy? Are they known for happiness? Are they known for peace? Or are they known as constantly striving and constantly causing division and the rest? And you see, there are a lot of people who make claims to be Christians, and I will say this, who are not Christians. They are not believers. I have no problem saying that. And it saddens me. I don't like saying it, but they've often bought into an idea of what a Christian looks like, and they live out a pictorial version of their faith, but it's not spiritual in nature. They are whitewashed tombs. They are facades. In fact, in the New Testament, these are often referenced as the spiritual leaders of their day. And we have to be careful with that because the Pharisees and the Sadducees lived out their faith very outwardly, but they were not real in that. And I also want us to be careful because it's easy to always see everyone else as Pharisaical and everyone else as, the Pharisee and the rest. But then we become the very things that we condone. We condemn others for their very strong outward, this is how you must be, this is how you must do, and so forth. And then we turn and do the same thing or have the same attitude. I'll give you a real life example of this. Happened a few years ago. Most of you know, if you've ever seen me preach or teach, especially here in the Midwest and the rest, I'm usually in jeans and a sweater, jeans and a sweatshirt, or jeans and a shirt. I don't really wear dress clothes per se, and it's not necessarily because I have something inherently against it. I think I own a suit. I couldn't actually tell you if I do right now or not. At least one that I think I have one that I wore recently for my grandfather's for him, he got an honor at Freed Harbin that I went down for. So I do own one, but it's just, especially the people that were around, that's just not the norm. And so I wanted to make sure that that's the case, especially if you've been in the South or other places where wearing your Sunday best was always a big deal. And I don't want to take away from that. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. What would be inherently wrong is if it becomes the sign of what you think a Christian must look like. That's where it becomes the problem. And so for all of those who've screamed about you can't use, suit, you have to have a suit and tie and the rest, I understand it. But if it becomes a sign of a pictorial sign of what a true believer is, it becomes a dangerous doctrine. On the other side, I remember I think it was sometime in December and it was cold, and I actually wore a suit and a sweater vest and the rest, and I had a tie on underneath. And I had a young lady come up to me and said, You've gone over to the dark side. Look at you. You've now become one of the people who thinks you have to have that. And I thought she was joking, so I kind of laughed. And then I realized she wasn't joking. And then it dawned on me that the same mentality that says you have to wear a suit and tie was the same mentality I was seeing here. It was the exact same mentality. It was the exact same judgmental, this is the way that it has to be. You can't break away. And it's such a dangerous two-sided coin when our spirituality becomes pictorial instead of spiritual, instead of what it really means to be a believer. So what do you expect the church to look like? Never let it come to the surface. Never let him ask what he expected him to look like. So this is the question I want you to ponder tonight. Maybe you can put it in the chat, or you can tell me on YouTube comments and the rest. What do you expect the church to look like? What should it look like? I'd love to know what you think. I think it oftentimes is a little bit messy. And I don't mean messy in the sense of disorder or disorganized or any of those things. What I just mean is people at different points in their faith. Some will be very immature in their faith, while others will be very strong in their faith. There will be wisdom and leaders, and there will be godly individuals who will be discipling others. There will be individuals who don't know all the things they need to know when it comes to just life in general, and there will be a little bit of a messiness to it. And not everything will always be perfect. And there would be at times conflict and the rest, not because of disunity, but because guess what? That when you are breaking away from the things of this world and trying to come into the spiritual kingdom of God, that there will be battles to be fought. So I hope you also see that I'm not referencing just what it would look like. I'm actually trying to reference what it should feel like, what Scripture says it should look like from that standpoint, from a spiritual perspective. Work hard then on the disappointment or anticlimax which is certainly coming to the patient during his first few weeks as a churchman. The enemy allows this disappointment to occur on the threshold of every human endeavor. It occurs when the boy who has been enchanted in the nursery by stories from the Odyssey buckles down to really learning Greek. It occurs when the lovers have got married and begin to the real task of learning to live together. In every department of life, it marks the transition from dreaming aspiration to laborious doing. Now, I love that last part. Expectation versus reality. In every department of life, it marks the transition from dreaming aspiration to laborious doing. You see, what I just referenced, what I would love to see the church as, or what it would look like, or how it would be, that's hard. It's really hard, and that's the laborious doing. That's where you have to get in there in the muck and the mire, and you have to walk with people in the hard times and talk with people that you don't like necessarily, but God has still called you to love them. That all of those things, no matter when they're in pain or they're suffering or when everything is great or everything is wonderful, that going from the dreaming aspiration to laborious doing is the hard part. That is where so often people get lost. The enemy takes this risk because he has a curious fantasy of making all these disgusting little human vermin into what he calls his free will lovers and servants. Sons is the word he uses with his inveterate love of degrading the whole spiritual world by unnatural liaisons with these two-legged animals. Desiring their freedom, he therefore refuses to carry them by their mere affections and habits to any of the goals which he sets before them. He leaves them to do it on their own, and there lies our opportunity. Free will. Desiring their freedom, he there refuses to carry them by their mere affections and habits to any of the goals which he sets before them. He leaves them to do it on their own. Now, this is, again, a liar, because God does not leave us to do it on our own. For those of you who know that when we become believers, that we are gifted with the Holy Spirit, and there is a blessing when that comes from that. But beyond that, we have been left His Word, and the Word of God guides and guards and directs, and that God works in many ways, including through the spiritual realm, in ways that we can't comprehend. We are not alone. This is a lie that He is using. But also remember, there lies our danger. If once they get through this initial dryness successfully, they become much less dependent on emotion, and therefore much harder to tempt. I've been writing hitherto on the assumption that the people in the next pew afford no rational ground for disappointment. Of course, if they do, if the patient knows that the woman with the absurd hat is a fanatical bridge player or the man with the squeaky boots a miser and extortioner, then your task is so much easier. Emotionally driven. Did you see this come up again? But also remember, therein lies our danger. If once they get through this initial dryness successfully, they become much less dependent on emotion and therefore much harder to tempt. All you then have to do is to keep out of his mind the question, if I, being what I am, can consider that I am in some sense a Christian, why should the different vices of these people in the next pew prove that their religion is mere hypocrisy and convention? You may ask whether it is possible to keep such an obvious thought from occurring even to a human mind. It is, Wormwood. It is. Now you have thought about it. All you then have to do is keep this out of his mind. And this is the question that he poses, and it's one I want to pose to you. Have you ever spent just a moment, especially in light of how we like to look at each other and like to judge one another and often like to compare ourselves? If I, being what I am, can consider that I am in some sense a Christian, why should the different vices of these people in the next pew prove that their religion is more hypocrisy and convention? How could that be if I too am one? Maybe, just maybe, it's because we are all Christians. And maybe, just maybe, this is just a distraction. Handle him properly, and it simply won't come into his head. Now, the beauty of it is what we just did there is now it is in your head. So maybe it's a thought you haven't contemplated before, or maybe it's one that you can contemplate this evening. He has not been anything like long enough with the enemy to have any real humility yet. What he says, even on his knees, about his own sinfulness is all parrot talk. At bottom, he still believes he has run up a very favorable credit balance in the enemy's ledger by allowing himself to be converted, and thinks that he is showing great humility and condescension in going to church with these smug, commonplace neighbors at all. Keep him in that state of mind as long as you can. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape. The church should be grateful I am here at all. Did you catch that? This is something I'm not surprised by. But can I just tell you, I hear this all the time. I hear this all the time from individuals. Well, the church didn't call me. Well, I mean, my kid doesn't come to church anymore. Nobody reaches out to him. Well, why didn't they? I mean, don't you understand how lucky we are just to have to be here? Or, if I don't get my way, I'm taking my money elsewhere. The church is lucky to have somebody like me. And can I be honest with you? There are a lot of moments where my own life, the life of a lot of ministers and others I know, and elders I know, and preachers I've known, that this pride can creep in at times. This moment where we think that we are the end of all things, as if the church will not function without us. And the reality is that God will continue on even without us. But the invitation is for us. It's to us. That the church should be grateful I am here at all. Instead, I should be grateful I have the church. I should be grateful that the church is here to support me, to guide me, to love me, that my God has provided even in this life. Beyond just the Holy Spirit and His Word and His guidance, He has gifted me a people who have been through what I've been through, a people who struggle like I struggle, to walk beside me, to encourage me, to uplift me, that I might continue on the path and walk into eternity in the arms of God. And that is a beautiful invitation. So, next week, we continue on. Letters 3, 4, and 5. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, for watching this online, for watching this after the fact, watching it live. I love all the comments. I look forward to going back and seeing all of them. I hate that I didn't get to so many, but we had so much to cover tonight. Thank you for being with us. If I can support you, if I can encourage you in any way, please reach out to me. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of the above. Love to support you guys in any way I can. I've said it again and I'll say it before. I love you all. If I can be there for you, I'm here for you. If you need anything, reach out. If not, I will see you all next Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Look forward to being back with you. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the week. Stay safe, especially if you're in snowy or icy areas. And as always, I'll see you next week.